All right, so the last couple of videos, I've talked about this book and some of the research that I've used from it. Um, this was an absolute steal. I mean, my goodness gracious, Amazon's selling this for $60. I paid $7.99 for this at half price, and it is worth every penny and then some. I've already gotten my money's worth. Um, Supposing just taking notes and reading this pile of trash and what these Masons do. I'm gonna read you a little bit. Have you ever wondered why it's impossible to get ahead? Why everyone in power is a Freemason? Well, on page 152 and 153 of this book, it talks about something called a Cowan. Cowan. A familiar term in Masonry which explains its meaning to every entered apprentice. Many etymologies have been proposed, all indefinitely unlikely and most indeed ridiculous. It has been identified with the Greek, and then there's a bunch of Greek letters which, I can't say or don't even know how to read. Anyway, which signifies dog. Hebrew, Syriac, and Arabic words possessing a phonetic resemblance have been cited as sources. Our phoneticist has been connected with its chronis by way of contrast, because Masonry has eternity as its object, while the Cowan belongs to time and is restricted within that measure. So it goes in here and it says, the word in history. Lexicography is inclined to regard the word as unknown in respect to derivation, but it seems unquestionably of Scottish origin and occurs in old books of account, in Scott's Rob Roy, and among Masonic documents is the well-known Shaw Statutes of 1598. It appears to have signified a low grade of craftsman, e.g., a builder of dry stone dikes or walls of bricks without mortar. In this way, it becomes a term of contempt, and in Masonry there's no doubt that it is applied to those outside the union of the guild. According to the same statutes, a master or fellow must not receive Cowans into his society or company, or send his own men to work along with them. The Melrose MS uses the unaccountable word losses as an equivalent for Cowans, and these were only to be employed when quote unquote regular Masons could not be had, and then they were not to know, quote, the privilege of the compass, square, level, and plumb rule. Well, they were to be displaced forthwith by Freemasons when these come forward to work. The Cowans had not served their time as bound apprentices, quote unquote, lawfully taken. If employed, they should be set to do plumbing with a line only. As disbarred at once from privileges and knowledge, it was supposed that they would pick up what scraps they could, and hence were distrusted as eavesdroppers. As outsiders, they were regarded as intruders, to be kept off as far as possible. They were intruders and cowans to Masonry. Anderson, being a Scotsman, would be acquainted with the word and its meaning in Masonry. It is therefore easy to account for its use in the second edition of his constitutions. The term is of no importance whatsoever in the speculative Masonry, and it serves no purpose to carry the inquiry further. Its equivalents are to be found, no doubt, when and whatsoever trade unions have flourished. The modern so-called blackleg. The blackleg is, of course, a Cowan. So we're all Cowans. Be proud of it. So, in continuing on, and I took a screenshot of this. This is one of the more disturbing things that I have read, and we're going to read it together. This is their Egyptian initiation restored section. Right, and we've talked about the Egyptian rite before in a previous video where they said that God had a pyramid and they were put in with a bunch of serpents. Well, guess what? This is a next level of that. Now, you can say, well, this is just the Egyptian rite. This is just the Egyptian rite. Well, we've talked about this before when you go to MasonicDictionary.com, which I've used for years, especially this right here. There's one part in this where it talks about no, it's not that one. Where is this? Right here in green. It ends with, so the Mason, adhering once more, as he so often does, to the conceptions of the Egyptians, chooses for a symbol of the immortality of the soul, which is known to be divine and true, the object of Casey, whose color is unchanging green. So the purpose of me exploring this part right here is showing that Freemasons take a lot from Egypt. Okay, and I've said for years, Freemasonry is the modern hole in the wall in Ezekiel, in which all these higher ups of Israel who painted themselves as religious people, they were in this room, no windows, saying God couldn't see what they were doing, and they were all worshiping idols behind closed doors. That's exactly what this is. The purposes of Freemasonry is to take you from God to Satan. All right? So we see this in Scripture. Let's make this bigger. Whoopsie, that may have been too big. Oh, yeah, that was a little too big. Wow, there's no in between. No in between. In Isaiah 30, 1 through 9, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit. They may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. For his princes were at Zoan, and his ambassadors came to Hanes. They were all ashamed of a people that could not profit them, nor be in help nor profit, but a shame and also a reproach. Burden of the beasts of the south, into the land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and old lion, the viper and fiery flying serpent. They will carry their riches upon the shoulders of young asses, and their treasures upon the bunches of camels, to a people that shall not profit them. For the Egyptians shall help in vain and to no purpose. Therefore have I cried concerning this, their strength is to sit still. Now go, write it before them at the table, and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come forever and ever, that this is a rebellious children, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Lord. Again, you see again in Isaiah 31, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help. Stay on horses and trust in chariots, because they are many, and horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. Yet he is also wise, and will bring evil, and will not call back his words, but will rise against the house of the evildoers, and against the help of them that work iniquity. Now the Egyptians are men and not God, and their horse is flesh and not spirit. When the Lord shall stretch out his hand, both he that helpeth shall falleth, and he that is hoping shall fall down, and they shall fall down together. You get the point. All of this is shame, confusion, and reproach, because Egypt was considered strength in those days, and wisdom, and all this other stuff. As he so often does, but the Mason adheres to the conception of the Egyptians. So, let's look at this trash. Oh, and it's a doozy. So, in the year 1770, a German Mason, von Koppen, in collaboration with J.W.B. von Hyman, produced an Egyptian rite in 7 degrees, under the title Krata Ripoa, which has been said on uncertain authority to signify the silence of God. Having regards to the sources of the compilation, it seems possible that the words are a corruption of the Greek, which signifies vasen, quote, whatever, a wine jar or goblet, and meaning, in other words, attraction and devotion, in this instance, to wine. The allusion being to Dionysic rapture. Understood in the sense of the mysteries, there seems no reason to suppose that the system was ever put in operation. Of course, you can see the lies through this. It's just, you can read between the lines. Oh, we don't do this, but yeah, you actually do. When we study MK Ultra, we know this is true. And it's Egyptology is naturally that of the period derived from Greek sources. I'm not even going to begin to pronounce those Greek names, and from certain Latin writers like Cicero and Apuleius, which I don't care if I'm saying these names wrong. But the work was done with care, and the result remains within the measures of moderation. It is of interest after its own manner and even suggestive. It has been moreover cited often, and as no adequate account exists in English. I propose to describe it in length, giving in the first place some account of the names and titles connected with the various grades. There are those which suggest nothing outside of Greek mythology and call for no Greek knowledge to identify. In the second place, there are some with a little acquaintance with Greek will explain readily. Official titles with Pathros was the title of a candidate according to the rite itself. Its more usual meaning corresponds to an overseer or warden. As for example, one who carried the image of the god, but the word is used by Apuleius, signifies the priest of Isis. We have also Stolites, or whatever, namely the yeoman and guardian of the robes as regards to the first term, and Cancellorus as regards, and it's for some reason my thing isn't moving over for that, so we'll go forward over here. The second, but that is an explanation of the rite itself, and it does not seem warranted. Mellifroros means one clothed in black or mourning garments. Christophus is Christian, firms a reference to the yoke of Christ and its bearing, but used in the sense of one who carries the marks of unction. There are also words which suggest corrupt Greek, such as pastorus, meaning disemboweler, which signifies emballers. The ordinary Greek term in the latter case is the equivalent of which is polyster in Latin. We also have audus, which stands for the orator, but it really means threshold. And with the aspirate way, journey and help on the way. In like manner, we see Pixen for the chapter of initiates, but there is no such Greek word. So also Zachoris is supposed to mean treasure, but I only find Zaconus, a late Latin word, the equivalent of which is a deacon. Special attention may be drawn to Penia, which according to the ritual account is a man acquainted with the mysteries. Nearest Greek word is meaning Penesiturus, and thus offers a very curious analogy. For the term Benia would seem to mean one who has survived the terror of seeing the great god Pan, which is an idol, which is disgusting. With another account, the word signifies Lupercalia, the sacrifices and plays dedicated to Pan at his festivals. The remaining terms may be held to explain themselves in the course of the account. So, grade titles. The 7 grades are those of the Pathophorus, Nicorus, the gate of death, and Meliphorus, the battle of the shadows of Christophorus. Belahai, the astronomer before the gate of the idols, and Propheta or Saphnath Pania, whatever. Gate of men. The candidate for the first degree is represented as prepared in a grotto, and thence conducted to the gate of men by a Thesmorphorus, or dispenser of the laws which govern the mysteries. The gate opened and the test questions were put, after which he was left to wander in the gloom of Beer-Antha, amidst artificial tempest and thunder, the sudden glare of lightning, and so forth. Remember, Luke 10:18, Jesus said he beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. He preserved his equilibrium. A reader of the laws recited the constitutions of the society, to which his consent was required. He had been hoodwinked at some stage of the proceedings and was now led to the Hierophant. An oath of discretion and fidelity was administered, with a sword pointed at his throat, after which he was restored to light and placed before two pillars, which we've talked about the pillars on this channel, between which a ladder of 7 steps leading to a vault with 8 doors of entrance. He was told that these doors were barred against the profane and would be open to him as to a child of celestial resources and divine tools. He was warned to beware of those prejudices and passions which distract from the path of felicity, and was counseled to fix his mind upon God, the source and preserver of all. He then ascended the ladder, and at each step various symbols were explained, including an interpretation of the names and attributes of the gods, of the idols. But it differed entirely from that which was told to the people. At the end of his experience, the candidate received the general password of the order, being the common mode of communication between all members. This was Amon, and it was held to signify, "Be thou discreet." He carried henceforth on his person a badge, medal, and talisman called Xylon. And thereafter he became keeper of the threshold. The gate of Phosphorus was devoted to physics, and there was an instruction in meteorology, anatomy, and the science of healing. The interior sense of symbolic language and hieroglyphic writing was also expounded. I wanted to let everybody know, if you want to take screenshots of this, you absolutely can. Get this out. Grade of Nicoris. The Naviate lasted for a year, and then a severe fast was imposed in preparation for the grade of Nicoris on those who were deemed worthy to proceed. The candidate was placed again in a dark chamber or grotto, where he was served on the day of his advancement with choice meals by beautiful women, who were either wives of the priest or virgins consecrated to Diana. When his strength was restored, they proceeded to stimulate desire by every kind of allurement. As a test of self-government, he had to withstand this temptation, and if successful, the Thesmophorus, as guide of the path, subjected him to further questions. The Stolistus, said to be the bearer of the Aspergillus, purified him with water, and he was called upon to certify that his life had been chaste and prudent. The guide flew toward him, bearing a serpent which was cast upon him, and straightway the hall of reception seemed to fill with reptiles, that terror might be struck into his soul. The greater his courage during this ordeal, the more he was overwhelmed with congratulations after his advancement. Again, these reptilians. Alright? Satan is seen as a serpent in the Garden of Eden and in Revelation 20. No serpent, which is the Satan, the devil, Lucifer. He was taken before 2 pillars of great height, representing east and west, and having a griffin between them, as an emblem of the sun, driving a wheel before them, from which proceeded 4 rays to typify the 4 seasons of the year. He was invested with a Cadius, regarded as a type of the sun's motion along the plane of the ecliptic, and received the password Eve, said to signify life, but also a serpent. The sign of recognition was crossing the arms upon the breast, skull and bones. Members of the grades of Nicoris were taught the use of hydrometer for circulating inundations of the Nile, geometry, architecture. These arts were secret and were discovered only to those whose, only discovered to the, oh, whoops, wrong way. And you've got a picture here. They show this ritual, and you see the woman with her breasts exposed, and it said the supreme test of the initiate. Come on now. Did I skip a page? 220. Yes, I did. All right, so those were secret and discovered by only those who, come on now, requirements were far advanced beyond the common capabilities of the people. Then the chorus had the care of the pillars, gates of death. When judged worthy of the next grade, being that of the gate of death, the postulant was notified as the date of his reception, and on that day was conducted by his guide to be a vestibule, over the door which was inscribed the title of the grade. You know, this reminds me of that song from the 80s, Walk Like an Egyptian. This is what they want you to do. Through this door, he entered a place of the dead, where he encountered the paraschites, or disembowelers, and the hieror, consecrated embalmers in the midst of their work. In the center was the sarcophagus of Osiris. I'm a product of the modern school system, what do you say? Who was famed to have been murdered recently. Having been asked whether he had taken part of the crime, and having protested his innocence, he was seized by two gravediggers and brought into another hall, where he was awaited by the Melanphorus, habited in black. The king of Egypt, who took part always in this ceremony, received him with a gracious countenance and offered him a golden crown if he doubted his powers of endurance during the rest of the ordeal. Knowing that he must reject the gift, the candidate cast it at his feet, whereupon the king cried for vengeance and smote him lightly on the head with a sacrificial axe. The gravediggers laid him on the ground, and the paraschites enveloped him in bandages, and all the assistants fell to groaning about him. He was carried through a door inscribed Sanctuary of Spirits into a place where the victims of fugitive death found himself encompassed by flames, lightnings, and thunder peals. Sharon took possession of him as if he were a ghost in reality, and bore him to the judge of the dead. He beheld Pluto surrounded by Rhadamanthus, and Minos by Election, Nyctus, Alistair, and Orpheus. The terrific tribunal addressed him severe questions on the course of his entire life, and he was condemned to wander in these regions of the underworld. He was relieved thereupon of his bandages and mortually apparel, receiving these new instructions: 1. Never to seek blood. 2. To help the members of the orders whose lives were in danger. 3. Never to leave a dead body unburied. 4. To look for a resurrection of the dead and a judgment to come. The sign of recognition in this grade was a peculiar embrace terrifying the power of death. The password was Monic Caramini, supposed to signify, I count the days of wrath. The initiate of this grade was occupied for a period in paintings and designing the decorations of sarcophagi and the swathing of mummies. He had lessons in grammatical writing and in rhetoric. The Melanphorus remained in this underworld till he was judged worthy of a more exalted mysteries, which failing he might be numbered among the Pharisaites or Heremi. But the only return to the light was by entrance into higher knowledge. I mean, that's why these doofuses think they're better than everybody else. They've been traumatized. So, Battle of Shadows. The time of wrath, as it was termed, lasted usually for 18 months, when the candidate for the Battle of Shadows was visited by the Theramorphos, who offered him a gracious salutation, armed him with sword and buckler, and invited him to follow. They traversed the underworld, where he was attacked suddenly by torchbearers hideously masked and surrounded by serpents. The guide encouraged him to withstand all dangers. Remember this song? There's a country music song that says, if you're going through hell, keep on going. Don't look back. If you're scared, don't show it. This is where they put their people through this. But in the end, he was overpowered. A rope was passed about his neck, and he was drawn hoodwinked over the ground to the place of assembly where he was to receive the new grade. The shadows then fled precipitately, uttering great cries. The candidate was raised, and the bandage removed from his eyes, which were dazzled by brilliant illumination. He saw the king seated at the side of Demorgus, which, again, I don't care if I said that wrong. Below these exalted persons were stalactites, or purified by water, hierostalates, or secretary, the Zachorus, or treasurer, and the Commosis, or master of the banquets. The honest, or orator, felicitated him on the resolution and counseled further preservance. He was presented with a bitter cup, the kukion of the ancient mysteries, which he must drain to the dregs. Thereafter he received the shield of Isis or Minerva, the shoes of Anubis, and the hood mantle of Orcus. He was armed also with a scimitar and commanded to behead a victim immured in a cavern, to the mouth of which he was conducted. As he entered, the assembly exclaimed with one voice, Niobe, behold the cave of the enemy. Within was the effigy of a beautiful woman, to all appearance alive. Whether he realized the deception seems uncertain, but at least he fulfilled the order, subsequently presenting the head to the king and Demorgus. After applauding the action, they informed him that this was the head of Gorgon, spouse of Typhon, and murderer of Arius. He was pledged ever to destroy evil, as in this present case, and was then clothed in new garment. His name was registered among the judges of the land, and he enjoyed henceforth free communication with the monarch, receiving his food daily from the court. When the code of laws there was given him a special decoration to be worn only at the reception of Christophorus, or in the city of Sais. It represented Isis or Minerva in the form of an owl, an emblem signifying that man is born blind and receives light only through experience and philosophy. The password of the grade was Yas, being the name of the supreme lawgiver. According to the assemblies of the grave were held in a chapter called Pixum, or justice. The initiate was required to master the mystery language of Amor. Grade of Baliab, we're not done yet. A Christophorus had the right to demand admission to the 5th grade, or that of Bahalat, and the Demagoras had no power to refuse. He was received in the hall of convocation, and was then taken into another chamber, where he took the sole spectator of a pageant in which all members took part. A personage demonstrated Arois came forward accompanied by several balchants bearing torches. They reached the mouth of a cavern from which flames spouted, and found the murderer Typhon within. Oris approached with drawn swords, and the monster rose up, exhibiting 100 heads, a body covered with scales, and a vast length of limbs. He was beaten to death by the hero, who cut off one of the heads, and without speaking exhibited it to all present. This pageant was followed by an instruction which explained the allegorical procedure. Typhon signified fire, one of the most terrible agents, and yet without it nothing could be accomplished in the world. Oris typified industry, which overcomes the violence of fire. In this grade, chemistry was taught, and chlamia was therefore the password. Gate of the Idols. Chains were placed upon the candidate in his preparation for the next grade, bearing the sonorous title of astronomer before the great gate of the Idols. In the first place, he beheld the gate of death, giving entrance to the cavern with which he had made acquaintance to the third degree. It was now filled with water, on which the boat of the Charon floated. There was also sarcophagi containing the bodies of those who had betrayed the order. The candidate was threatened with death like theirs if he became guilty of such a crime. A new pledge was administered, after which he was instructed respecting the origin of the idols and of the government of the people by means of their own credulity. With the importance of preserving a polytheism among the vulgar for this reason, there was in truth but one God, present in the universe and transcending the comprehension of mankind. A practical knowledge of astronomy was confirmed in this grade, and the participant is said to have been warned against makers of horoscopes, an author of idolatry and superstition. The candidate was then led to the gate of the idols and introduced to their pantheon. What he saw was magnificent paintings, and what he received was a fuller account of their histories. The Prometheus concealing nothing. He was taught the sacerdotal dance, representing the course of the stars, and received the password Ibis, a symbol of vigilance. Vigilance. Wonder what happens if you call Mario Ibis. He was presented subsequently with the role of chief inspectors and members of the society, which was spread over the surface of the globe. And upgrade not only the king and Demogorus, but the members themselves must consent to the astronomer's advancement to the 7th grade, being that of a man acquainted with the mysteries. It's a shame we got to speak of this thing, but of this garbage. But we got to expose these people and rebuke them in the name of Jesus Christ. And the completion of his education in all functions, public and political. The reception was followed by a procession, including an exposition of sacred emblems before the people. On the night following, the Oedipi assembled in 4-squared houses outside the town. They were held to be the sojourn of the manes, for the order was supposed to communicate with the souls of the dead, which you're not supposed to do. When the candidate beheld, however, was a series of mural paintings representing human life. The new prophet, and they call these people prophets, was presented with a beverage composed of wine and honey, signifying that he had reached the term of his trials, and that he was to enjoy henceforward all the sweetness of knowledge. The badge of this grade was a cross representing the cardinal points. He was clothed in a white garment, and his head was shaved. The sign of recognition was crossing the hands within the sleeves of the robe. The password was Adam, explained to be the root of the name Adonis. He was received the title of the Panagla, meaning circumcision of the tongue, and indicating that he had now acquired all sciences. His tongue was unloosed, for he was qualified to speak unto all. The last ceremony was the shaving of the head and the presentation of the peculiar science or square coffer. Mysteries had now been explained to him in their plenary sense, and the reception was licensed to read the archives written in the tongue of Ammon, the key of which he possessed. But the greater derogative belonging to the 7th grade was to share in the election of a king. The new prophet might also, after due period, aspire to the official positions, not excepting that of Demogorus. Early Egyptology. I have said that there is no trace, as there indeed no possibility of the working of these degrees in ceremonial forms, though uncritical people like Reagan has included it in their list of Masonic rites. There is indeed nothing to warrant the idea that it was put forward as anything but an individual study of the Egyptian mysteries by a writer who was supposed, like other mythologies, that of Egypt was to be explained by a natural hypothesis concerning the science of priestcraft. The Chrono Rapora is presented as a seminary for the preparation of a priesthood and for the maintenance of its peculiar mysteries and art, being the rule of the people by the power of a false religion. You can tell, you read this and you can think of things in media that's been pushed forward using this same thing. movies, television shows, everything has a form of this. You can't tell me they don't put their people through this. That's what MK Ultra is. It's torture. Maintenance of a peculiar art, being the rule of the people by the power of false religion. The system represents fairly the sum of Egyptology in the year 1770, derived from Greek sources and with the names of the older god rendered for the most part into their presumed Greek equivalents. It may be compared throughout with the elaborate and much more learned work of Baron de Saint Croix, published at Paris in 1784 under the title Memories pour Savoir, a History de Religion, blah, 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 blah. We've seen this before, how they say yellow was unemphasized and seemingly almost unrecognized in Masonry because it says light. Well, yet right after this was written in 1919, you hear follow the yellow brick road, follow the path of false alignment. So they absolutely 100% are using this while at the same time saying, oh, we don't really believe in this garbage. So we're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. This author was the mother of all superstitions as well of all knowledge. The priests were monotheists, and their mythology was a system of allegorical fables for the concealment of their science and doctrine and for the maintenance of their rule over the nation. It will be seen that the conclusion to identical and need not concern us further. The criticism in both cases, as in that of the Warburton, is typical of the several periods, and after due allowance for variation with extended measures of knowledge, it has not passed away entirely in the light of the present day. That of the Crata Repora has a special interest from the Masonic standpoint as representing a particular and drastic a peculiar and drastic cannabis in the reveries of the Hermetic Masonry, the school of Avignon, Pernici, and Baron Sactre, for which Egypt was a sanctuary of Vedic secret knowledge. In conclusion, as regards to Crata Repora, I have given special considerable space to what is best is a matter of hypothetical reconstruction into which invention has entered largely and indeedly predominates throughout, but is not without importance for the period when many persons, both Masons and Virtuosi, of archaeology, looked in Germany, as they did in France, towards Egypt as the cradle of antique mysteries. Howsoever they happen to understand them, Egypt, more than India and far more than Greece in the days when the mysteries flourished, was regarded as the country of initiation. At the value of each in respect of real warrants of search, these are witnesses to the same effect in the present day, and it seems to me, as one who watches only from without, that the more fully we learn concerning the sanctuaries of the Delta, the greater looms their science, of which astronomy stands in the forefront as a mighty signpost or indicator. I am not entitled to judge those who affirm that the Book of the Dead, in respect of several sections, is really a book of initiation, but I remember how great findings of scholarship in the past have come to reversed later on, and we shall see that when the time comes what may happen in this case. So, yeah. It is a shame to speak on this garbage, but we've got to rebuke this pile of trash. This is 100% a gold mine. This is a gold mine. Oh my goodness, what a gold mine this was. This would be well worth $60. But you can find it a lot cheaper, I know, because I paid $8 for it. So yeah, definitely would recommend this if you are exposing this garbage. It is, you gotta be vigilant though. True vigilant. As in, praying to Jesus before reading this trash. I mean, this knocks Christianity left and right. You can see where they twist it. They called the cross of Jesus Christ a cube. Remember when round Saturn's eye used to talk about the cube? Cube of Saturn. They called the cross of Jesus Christ a cube. Which unfolds, and I posted a screenshot of that on Twitter, and I said, that's why you see all these celebrities wearing a cross. Oh, they twist the words of Jesus Christ left and right. The words of God. And it's a disgusting thing. I guess, hell's a long time to be wrong. You got to turn to Jesus Christ now, because everything that these people take, be a coward. Depart from this trash. Ain't no active Freemason ever going to step foot in the kingdom of heaven if he's an active brother at the time of his death. You got to turn away from this lodge. I mean, the doofuses that drive around with the decals on their car and wear the Masonic hat, logo on their hat, they don't know what they're in. They're just doofuses. This is what the high ups are doing. Beyond the masters. And they're all participant in Lucifer worship. And this is what is influencing our modern society. You got to turn from it. You got to repent and turn to Jesus Christ. You got to turn to Jesus Christ first, then repent, because you can't repent. Truly repent. And really turn from sin and the temptations and your weaknesses without the strength of Christ, who forgives all that truly believe on him. Because if not, all these people are going to burn in hell. All these people are going to burn in hell. And you don't want to be there with them. You don't want Jesus to look at you and say, I know you not. You gotta have a personal relationship with Jesus and be in your King James Bible daily. Oh boy, this is terrible. What I just read was terrible, but it's what these people program their people. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm going to end this. Turn to Jesus today. Only Jesus Christ saves. All else will lead you to eternal damnation, the eternal lake of fire.